The night was unusually quiet, even for the sleepy cul-de-sac Simon Hayes called home. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the streetlights and the occasional rustle of leaves in the cool breeze. Simon had been sprawled on his worn-out couch, half-heartedly scrolling through his phone and arguing with an algorithm that thought he might enjoy videos of cats playing the piano. It was 11:47 p.m. when the knock came at his door. Not the polite, neighborly kind of knock that preceded a request to borrow sugar, but a sharp, deliberate series of raps that sent a jolt through Simon's chest. He frowned, glancing at the clock. Who knocks on doors anymore? Use the doorbell like a civilized person, he muttered, dragging himself off the couch. As he opened the door, Simon was prepared for anything. A late-night salesperson, a prankster, maybe even his perpetually annoyed neighbor, Mrs. Klein. What he wasn't prepared for was her. Standing on his porch was a figure that defied simple description. She was tall, easily 6 feet, but it wasn't her height that made Simon's jaw slacken. Her skin shimmered like molten silver, reflecting the dim porch light in waves of color. Her eyes, larger than human but not unsettlingly so, glowed faintly, swirling with hues of purple and gold. Her hair, if it could even be called that, cascaded down her back in translucent strands that seemed to pulse faintly with their own light. Simon blinked, then blinked again. I think you have the wrong house," he said, his voice more incredulous than annoyed. The woman, if woman was even the right word, tilted her head slightly, her expression somewhere between amused and determined. "Simon Hayes," she said, her voice rich and melodic, with a slight reverberation, like a chord plucked on an alien harp. "I have found you at last." Simon's first thought was that he was hallucinating, perhaps the result of eating questionable leftovers. His second thought was to check if there was a hidden camera somewhere. This had to be a prank. "Found me? Sure. Can I ask who or what you are?" "I am Irinia of Carosa," she replied, as if that explained everything. Simon squinted. "Carosa. Right. Sounds like a fancy bottled water brand. Look, lady, Irinia, this is all very impressive, but I'm really not in the mood for whatever this is." Irinia stepped closer, the faint glow of her skin casting soft light on Simon's bewildered face. "This is no jest, Simon Hayes. I have traversed light years to find you. For years your face has been etched into my thoughts, your words a beacon across the void." Simon stared at her, deadpan. "Is this about that unpaid parking ticket? Because I swear, it wasn't my car." Irinia blinked, her expression shifting to confusion. "Parking ticket?" He sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "Never mind. Let's back up a bit. You traveled light years? To find me? Why?" She regarded him solemnly, her luminous eyes searching his. "Do you recall your participation in the Galactic Council Summit 6 years ago?" Simon froze. It wasn't a memory he often revisited, not because it wasn't extraordinary, but because it was so absurdly secretive that it felt like a fever dream. He'd been whisked away by what he could only describe as a bureaucratic alien delegation, apparently deemed an ideal, human representative due to some academic papers he'd written on theoretical xenobiology. He'd spent 3 bewildering days trying not to embarrass Earth in front of intergalactic dignitaries. "How do you know about that?" he asked cautiously. "I was there," Irinia said simply. "You spoke with wit and curiosity, unburdened by the posturing of others. Your words resonated deeply within me, as is rare among my people. I have sought you ever since." Simon let out a sharp laugh, equal parts incredulous and nervous. "You fell for my wit? Lady, I was cracking jokes to keep from passing out. I'm pretty sure half the attendees thought I was a buffoon." "They were mistaken," Irinia said, her voice firm. "In Kirasan culture, bonds are formed through intellectual and emotional resonance. Your words, your essence, ignited something profound within me." Simon rubbed his temples. "Right. Of course. Why wouldn't an alien have a crush on me? This is my life now." Irinia frowned slightly. A crush? Never mind, he said quickly, waving it off. Look, Irinia, this is all a lot to process. You can't just show up on someone's doorstep glowing like a cosmic lava lamp and expect them to jump into your spaceship. She regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. You require time. But understand this, Simon Hayes. Your presence has been a light in the darkness of my existence. I would not have come here if it were not of utmost importance. Uh-huh, Simon said, still trying to decide if he was dreaming. So what happens now? You give me a space pamphlet? Free trial of interstellar romance? Irinia's lips curved into a small smile, the first hint of humor he'd seen from her. No pamphlets, but I do have a ship and an invitation to visit Kurosa, to see the stars as they were meant to be seen. Simon opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. As much as his mind screamed at him to dismiss this as lunacy, a small, stubborn part of him, the part that had once dreamed of space as a child, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was real. Okay, he said finally, I'll listen. But if this turns out to be an elaborate prank, I want it on record that I'm not above calling the cops. Irinia inclined her head, her glowing hair cascading like liquid light. It is no prank, Simon Hayes, and I promise you will not regret this. Simon sighed, stepping aside to let her in. Well, come on then. Let's see if I've got any coffee left. You aliens drink coffee, right? Irinia hesitated, then nodded solemnly. I have heard of this coffee, a legendary brew. Simon snorted, closing the door behind her. Great. Let's start there. Welcome to Earth, Irinia. Try not to touch anything radioactive. As they moved into his small, cluttered kitchen, Simon couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a sharp turn into the surreal. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. Simon Hayes prided himself on his ability to adapt to unusual situations. He once navigated a blackout during an online trivia competition by scribbling answers on napkins and yelling them into his phone. But as he poured a cup of coffee for an alien woman glowing faintly in his kitchen, he couldn't help but feel like he was out of his depth. Irinia stood near the counter, her luminous skin casting soft, shifting patterns on his cabinets. She was examining a box of cereal with a level of intensity usually reserved for nuclear codes. What is the purpose of this frosted crunch? It's breakfast, Simon replied, setting the coffee cup in front of her. Sugar-coated cardboard that people convince themselves is a healthy start to the day. Irinia tilted her head, considering his words. Your species consumes simulated sustenance for nourishment? Curious. Simon smirked. Oh, it's not just sustenance. Wait until you see Pop-Tarts. That'll really blow your mind. She set the cereal box down and studied the steaming mug. The faint glow of her skin reflected on the coffee's surface, making it look like liquid starlight. She raised it to her lips with the air of someone about to sample an ancient potion. Her reaction was instantaneous. Irinia's glowing eyes widened, her iridescent hair flaring briefly like a solar flare. She set the cup down carefully, as though it might explode. This coffee, it is like liquid fire. Simon chuckled, taking a sip from his own mug. Welcome to Earth. We run on caffeine and bad decisions. Irinia blinked, her expression a mixture of curiosity and mild alarm. Your species willingly consumes a substance with such volatile properties? Some of us even pay extra for fancy versions, Simon said, leaning back against the counter. Now, about this whole light years to find me thing. You mentioned something about a galactic summit. How does that connect to you showing up at my door like an interstellar Girl Scout? Irinia set the coffee aside, her expression growing more serious. 6 years ago, you were summoned to the Galactic Council as a representative of Earth. Though your role was minor, your words during the discussions left a profound impression on me. Kiro-sans value intellectual and emotional resonance above all else, and your presence resonated with me. Simon raised an eyebrow. I gave a 3-minute speech about the importance of not accidentally vaporizing Earth with stray intergalactic traffic. Hardly Shakespeare. To you, perhaps, Irenaeus said, her voice soft. But to me it was a moment of clarity amid chaos. Your words were unpretentious, genuine. They lingered. Simon stared at her, then shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. So, let me get this straight. You're telling me I've got an alien stalker because I made a dad joke at a space council meeting? Irenaeus' brows furrowed. Stalker? I do not comprehend. It's a human thing, Simon said, waving it off. Look, Irenea, I'm flattered. I think, but you've got the wrong guy. I'm just some random astrophysicist. I've got a leaky faucet I've been ignoring for 3 months and a cat that hates me. Hardly interstellar boyfriend material. Irenea regarded him with quiet intensity. Simon Hayes, you underestimate yourself. You possess a rare combination of intellect, wit, and humility. These qualities are prized among my people. Simon snorted. Yeah, well, try explaining that to my cat. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden hum and a faint vibration that seemed to emanate from nowhere. Simon's mug rattled against the counter. What's happening? He asked, instinctively gripping the edge of the counter. Irenaea's expression remained calm, though her glowing eyes flickered briefly. It seems my ship has detected temporal interference, a minor anomaly. Simon blinked. Your ship? Wait, where is it? Don't tell me you parked it in my driveway. It is cloaked in orbit, Irenea replied matter-of-factly. However, its temporal sensors are linked to my neural interface. The anomaly is curious. I shall investigate. Simon's mouth opened, then closed. He wasn't sure which part of that sentence to question first. Okay, I'm going to need you to explain that in regular human words. What kind of anomaly are we talking about? Like a rip in the space-time continuum? Or is it just picking up reruns of bad 80s sitcoms? Irenea closed her eyes briefly, as though accessing some internal system. It appears to be a localized temporal shift, a minor fluctuation, likely harmless. Harmless, Simon repeated, narrowing his eyes. That's not exactly comforting coming from someone whose coffee almost ignited her hair. Irenea opened her eyes, her gaze steady. There is no cause for alarm. Temporal fluctuations are not uncommon in regions with high quantum activity. Your planet's magnetic field often exacerbates them. Simon sighed, running a hand through his hair. Right. So, temporal anomalies are just another Tuesday for you. Good to know. Irenaea's lips curved into the faintest smile. You adapt well, Simon Hayes. Your humor is unexpected. It's a coping mechanism, Simon muttered. So, what happens now? Do I just go back to pretending my life was normal before you showed up? Or is there a galactic hitch to all this? Irenea tilted her head slightly. Your life was never normal, Simon Hayes. You are part of a greater tapestry than you realize. My presence here is only the beginning. Simon groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. Of course it is. Next you're going to tell me I've been chosen to save the galaxy or something. Irenea regarded him thoughtfully. Not yet, though your wit may prove invaluable in the trials ahead. Simon threw up his hands. Great. No pressure or anything. The hum subsided, and the coffee cup stopped rattling. Irenea took a step closer, her expression softening. I understand that this is overwhelming for you, but I assure you, Simon Hayes, you are not alone in this journey. Simon met her glowing gaze and sighed. You know, if this all turns out to be some elaborate caffeine-induced hallucination, I'm going to be really mad at myself for not writing it down. Irenaea's smile widened, a rare and genuine expression that lit up her features. Then perhaps it is wise to proceed as if it is not a hallucination. You may find the truth more fascinating than fiction. Simon stared at her for a moment, then took a long sip of his coffee. Yeah, well, let's just hope the truth comes with a refund policy. Simon Hayes had always thought of himself as a relatively grounded guy. Sure, his day job involved theorizing about black holes and dreaming up elaborate scenarios where humanity accidentally discovered alien life by leaving its junk satellites in orbit. But those were purely intellectual exercises. Now, as he stood in his backyard, staring up at a patch of stars that seemed to shimmer unnaturally, he couldn't decide if he was more awestruck or mildly annoyed. "So," he said, hands shoved into his hoodie pockets. "When you say cloaked in orbit, are we talking about some kind of stealth tech? Or are we just playing an interstellar version of hide-and-seek?" Irinia stood beside him, her glowing hair faintly illuminating the shadows. She looked up at the same patch of stars, her iridescent eyes narrowing slightly. "It is a cloaking field," she explained patiently. "A sophisticated quantum refractor that bends light and electromagnetic waves, rendering the ship undetectable by your primitive technologies." Simon snorted. "Primitive? Listen, lady, we've got microwave burritos and Wi-Fi. Show some respect." Irinia tilted her head, clearly confused. "Microwave? Burritos? Are these sustenance or weapons?" "Depends on how hungry you are," Simon muttered. "Anyway, what's the deal? You said there was some kind of temporal anomaly, and now we're standing here staring at the sky like astronomers who forgot their telescopes." Irinia raised a hand, her fingers glowing faintly as she manipulated an invisible interface. A soft hum filled the air, followed by a ripple that seemed to cascade across the sky. For a moment, Simon swore he could see the outline of something massive and otherworldly, sleek, with curved edges that caught the faintest starlight. "There it is," Irinia said softly, her voice tinged with pride. "The Kaleidus. My vessel." Simon's jaw dropped. "That's your ship? It looks like a giant metal stingray had a baby with a neon light show." Irinia blinked, uncertain whether to take that as a compliment. "The design is optimized for both aesthetic and functional purposes. Its organic contours reduce drag in atmospheric environments, and its quantum core generates—" She trailed off, noticing Simon's glazed-over expression. "Perhaps I am over-explaining." No, Simon said, waving his hand. "By all means, keep going. I'm sure the neighbors would love to hear about quantum cores while they're trying to watch late-night reruns." Irinia's lips curved into a faint smile. "You deflect with humor, a common trait among your kind." "Hey, it's either that or have a full-blown existential crisis," Simon said. "So how do we get up there? You've got a teleportation beam or a magic carpet or—" Before he could finish, a beam of light shot down from the ship, enveloping them both. Simon felt a strange sensation, like being submerged in warm water without actually getting wet. His backyard disappeared in an instant, replaced by a gleaming interior that looked like the love child of a luxury yacht and a high-tech laboratory. "Okay," Simon said, glancing around. "I take it back. This is way cooler than a magic carpet." The Kaleidus's interior was breathtaking. The walls shimmered with a pearlescent glow, and the floor seemed to pulse faintly with energy. Strange, crystalline structures protruded here and there, emitting soft ambient light. Simon couldn't help but notice a few floating orbs that zipped around like particularly enthusiastic Roombas. "What are those?" he asked, pointing at one of the orbs. "Maintenance drones," Irinia replied, stepping gracefully through the space. "They ensure the ship remains in optimal condition." Simon watched as one of the orbs bumped into a wall, emitted a cheerful beep, and continued on its way. "Yeah, real optimal," he muttered. Irinia ignored the comment and gestured for him to follow. "Come, there is much to discuss." They walked through a corridor that seemed to shift subtly as they moved, the walls rearranging themselves like a living organism. Simon tried not to feel too unsettled by it. "Does the ship, change shape on its own?" "It adapts to the needs of its occupants," Irinia explained. "The Kaleidos is semi-sentient, capable of interpreting commands and responding intuitively." Simon stopped in his tracks. "Wait a minute. Your ship is alive? Should I be worried about it getting jealous if I sit on the wrong chair?" Irinia gave him a bemused look. The Kaleidos does not experience emotions as you understand them. It is merely aware. Great, Simon said, eyeing the walls warily. I've always wanted to be judged by sentient architecture. They entered a circular room that appeared to be the ship's control center. A massive, translucent console floated in the center, displaying a dizzying array of symbols and diagrams. Irinia approached it and began manipulating the interface with practiced ease. Here, she said, gesturing for Simon to join her. This is the anomaly I detected. Simon squinted at the holographic display, trying to make sense of it. Looks like a really complicated screensaver. Irinia sighed. This is a temporal disturbance originating approximately 3,000 miles from your current location. Its signature suggests advanced technology, far beyond anything your planet possesses. Simon frowned. So, what you're saying is, someone's messing with time, and it's not us? Precisely, Irinia said, and its proximity to your planet is troubling. Such disturbances rarely occur without significant consequences. Simon rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, but why does this involve me? I'm not exactly qualified to deal with rogue time anomalies. You underestimate your importance, Irinia said, her gaze steady. Your connection to the Galactic Council, your intellect, and your adaptability make you uniquely suited to assist in this matter. Simon groaned. I knew I should have taken that accounting job. Way less intergalactic responsibility. Irinia's lips twitched, as though suppressing a smile. You will not face this alone, Simon Hayes. Together, we will uncover the truth. Yeah, well, I hope the truth comes with snacks, Simon muttered, because I'm starting to think this is going to be a long night. As Irinia continued her analysis, Simon leaned against the console trying to process everything. Aliens, spaceships, temporal anomalies. It was like his life had turned into a sci-fi movie, and he wasn't sure if he was the plucky hero or the comic relief. Hey, he said, glancing at Irinia, do you ever just take a break? You know, kick back, watch some bad TV, eat a bag of chips? Irinia raised an eyebrow. Kirosans do not engage in such activities. Well, maybe you should start, Simon said with a grin. Might make saving the universe a little more bearable. Irinia regarded him for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps I shall consider it, but for now we have a mystery to solve. Simon sighed. Yeah, let's save the universe first, then we'll talk about introducing you to Netflix. As the ship hummed softly around them, Simon couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of dread and excitement. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. Simon Hayes sat cross-legged in a sleek chair that had formed itself out of the floor, sipping a neon blue liquid Irinia assured him was safe for human consumption. It tasted like a cross between watermelon and static electricity, which was oddly refreshing. So let me get this straight, Simon began, gesturing with his cup. We're tracking some kind of rogue temporal disturbance. You think it's coming from an advanced species, and for some reason, I'm supposed to be helpful in all of this? Irinia adjusted the holographic interface before her, the shimmering symbols reflecting off her glowing hair. Correct, though I would phrase it with less skepticism and more confidence in your abilities. Simon chuckled. Confidence? I'm a guy who once set his microwave on fire trying to make popcorn. You're betting on the wrong horse, lady. Irinia turned, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. I have placed no bets, Simon Hayes, but your self-deprecation is unwarranted. You underestimate your capacity for ingenuity under pressure. Yeah, well, Simon muttered, swirling his drink. We'll see how ingenious I am when the universe is on the line. Before Irinia could respond, the ship's ambient hum shifted, deepening into a throaty vibration that seemed to pulse through the floor. One of the floating orbs zipped into the room, flashing a series of bright lights and emitting a sound that could only be described as anxious beeping. Irinia's expression grew serious. It appears we are not alone. Simon sat up straighter, his pulse quickening. Define not alone. Is this the neighbors dropping by for tea, kind of not alone, or the run for your life variety? Irinia turned back to the console, her fingers dancing across the interface. A holographic display materialized, showing a sleek, menacing vessel approaching their position. Its angular design and crimson glow screamed, "Villainous overlord" to Simon. "That," he said, pointing at the hologram, "is definitely the run-for-your-life kind." Irinia's gaze remained steady. "It is a reconnaissance ship from the Zalvar Dominion. Their species thrives on conflict and conquest. They must have detected the temporal anomaly as well." Simon groaned, rubbing his temples. "Fantastic. We're on a galactic scavenger hunt, and the bullies just showed up to steal our lunch money." Irinia turned to him, her expression calm but resolute. "We must act swiftly. If they reach the source of the anomaly before us, the consequences could be catastrophic." "Catastrophic how?" Simon asked, already regretting the question. "The Zalvar Dominion's technology is destructive by design," Irinia explained. "If they harness the anomaly's power, they could destabilize entire star systems." Simon let out a low whistle. "Okay, yeah, that's worse than losing lunch money." The ship shuddered slightly, and the room's ambient lighting dimmed. Irinia moved to a side console and spoke in a language Simon didn't recognize, but instinctively knew was some kind of stern command. The ship responded with a reassuring hum, and the floating orbs began zipping around with renewed purpose. Simon stood, clutching his drink like it was a lifeline. "So, what's the plan? Please tell me it doesn't involve me in a spacesuit trying to outsmart intergalactic warlords." Irinia's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Your role will not require combat, Simon Hayes. I need your intellect and adaptability. Leave the physical confrontation to me." Simon raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you're telling me you're a scientist and a warrior? Do you ever just take a day off to, I don't know, knit or something?" Irinia gave him a bemused look. "Kurosans are trained in multiple disciplines. Versatility is essential for survival." "Well, good for you," Simon muttered. "Meanwhile, I'm over here trying not to spill my space juice." The holographic display shifted, showing a rapidly approaching energy signature. Irinia's expression grew more focused. "The Zalvar ship will intercept us in less than 5 minutes. We must engage the quantum slipstream to reach the anomaly first." Simon frowned. "Engage the what now? Is that like hyperspace, warp speed, or are we just shaking a snow globe and hoping for the best?" Irinia ignored his question, tapping several glowing icons. The ship's hum intensified, and Simon felt a strange sensation, like being stretched in every direction at once before snapping back into place. When the sensation passed, the hologram updated to show that they had outpaced the Zalvar ship. A new location appeared on the display, a swirling, shimmering rift in space that looked like a wound in the fabric of reality. "That," Simon said, pointing at the rift, "looks very not good." Irinia nodded. "The temporal anomaly. It is more unstable than I anticipated." "So, what's the plan?" Simon asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We just patch it up with some space duct tape?" "Not quite," Irinia said, her tone serious. "We must analyze its properties and determine its origin. If it is artificial, we need to disable the device creating it." Simon glanced at the rift, then back at her. "And if it's not artificial?" Irinia hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Then we must hope it can be contained before it collapses into a singularity." Simon let out a nervous laugh. "Great. So it's either fix the space-time blender or watch it turn the galaxy into a smoothie. No pressure." Irinia approached the console, her glowing fingers manipulating the interface with precision. "Simon Hayes, your humor is appreciated, but focus is essential. Prepare yourself. This will require your full attention." Simon set his empty cup on the console and took a deep breath. "Okay, fine. But if we survive this, you're trying popcorn. It's a human rite of passage." The ship slowed as it approached the rift, the swirling colors casting eerie shadows across the control room. Simon could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but he forced himself to focus. Whatever was waiting for them inside that anomaly, he had a sinking feeling it was only the beginning. The Kaleidos drifted closer to the swirling anomaly, its sleek surface reflecting the vibrant hues of the rift. Simon stared at the shimmering vortex, a mix of awe and dread bubbling in his chest. It looked alive, like some cosmic kaleidoscope spinning out of control, and every instinct he had screamed that this was a bad idea. "So, just to recap," Simon said, breaking the tense silence. "We're flying into that thing? The giant cosmic blender that looks like it wants to eat us?" Irinia didn't glance up from the interface she was manipulating. "We must enter the anomaly to analyze its structure and stabilize its core. The external readings are insufficient." "Great," Simon muttered. Nothing like a good old field trip into the unknown to really shake off the monotony of daily life. Irinia tilted her head, her glowing hair catching the rift's light. "Your sarcasm is noted." "Yeah, well, it's my coping mechanism," Simon replied, gripping the edge of the console as the ship began to hum with increased energy. "You don't get this kind of existential dread working a desk job." The ship eased forward, and Simon felt the now familiar sensation of being stretched and compressed simultaneously. The view outside shifted dramatically. The swirling colors of the rift enveloped them, and Simon's breath caught as the ship's exterior cameras displayed the interior of the anomaly. It was stunning and terrifying. Streams of light twisted and turned in impossible patterns, defying any sense of logic or physics. Fragments of what looked like entire landscapes floated aimlessly. A jagged mountain peak here, a lush green meadow there, even what appeared to be part of a ruined city suspended in midair. "Okay, that's not normal," Simon said, pointing at the fragments on the display. "Are those pieces of other worlds?" Irinia nodded, her expression grim. "The anomaly has fractured space-time, pulling fragments from different realities. If it continues to expand, these fragments could destabilize further, merging or collapsing into singularities." Simon rubbed his temples. "Singularities, right. Because nothing says, 'fun weekend,' like accidentally creating black holes." The ship slowed to a stop near what appeared to be the anomaly's epicenter, a glowing, pulsing core that radiated energy in every direction. The light it emitted was almost hypnotic, shifting through colors Simon didn't even have names for. "That's it?" Simon asked, his voice hushed. "That's what's causing all this." Irinia's fingers danced across the console, bringing up layers of data. "It appears to be an artificial construct, a device designed to manipulate temporal and spatial fields. The energy signature suggests it is of Zalvar origin." Simon blinked. "Wait, so the bad guys made this thing? They're the reason the universe looks like it got stuck in a washing machine?" Irinia hesitated. "Not necessarily. The Zalvar are known for their destructive technologies, but this level of precision is unusual. It is possible the device was stolen or repurposed." Simon groaned. "Great. Space criminals playing with reality itself. What could possibly go wrong?" The ship's console emitted a sharp beep, and one of the floating orbs zipped into the room, flashing urgent lights. "What now?" Simon asked, watching the orb nervously. Irinia's expression tightened. "The Zalvar ship has entered the anomaly. They are closing in on our position." Simon threw his hands in the air. "Of course they are. Because why wouldn't intergalactic warlords follow us into a space-time disaster?" Irinia's gaze remained steady. "We must act quickly. The device must be deactivated before they can reach it." Simon followed her to another section of the control room, where a smaller console displayed a detailed schematic of the anomaly's core. Irinia began working rapidly, her glowing fingers a blur as she input commands. "Okay," Simon said, trying to stay calm. "What's the plan? How do we shut this thing down without blowing ourselves up?" Irinia's voice was calm but firm. "The device is shielded by a complex energy field. I can disrupt it temporarily, but someone will need to physically interface with the core to deactivate it." Simon frowned. "Physically interface? You mean touch it? In there?" "Yes," Irinia said simply. Simon stared at her. "And by someone, I'm guessing you mean me?" Irinia met his gaze, her expression softening slightly. You are human. The core is emitting energy frequencies that are less likely to harm you than they would a kerosene. Your physiology is uniquely suited to this task. Simon laughed nervously. Uniquely suited? That's a fancy way of saying you're expendable, isn't it? Irinia's lips curved into a faint smile. I would not ask this of you if it were not necessary. Simon sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Fine, but if I die, I'm coming back to haunt you, and I'm bringing microwave burritos. Irinia's smile widened slightly. Noted. The ship deployed a small pod, which Simon climbed into with no small amount of trepidation. As the pod ejected into the anomaly, he gripped the control panel tightly, his heart pounding. The pod maneuvered through the swirling chaos, bringing him closer to the glowing core. It was even more intimidating up close, its energy crackling and sparking like a living thing. All right, Simon muttered to himself. No big deal. Just reach into the space-time blender and turn it off. Easy peasy. Irinia's voice crackled through the comms. Simon, you must connect the stabilizer module to the core's access point. It will disrupt the energy field long enough for you to deactivate the device. Simon spotted the access point, a small, glowing panel embedded in the core's surface. He grabbed the stabilizer module from the pod's storage compartment and steeled himself. Here goes nothing, he muttered, stepping out of the pod. The moment he touched the core's surface, a surge of energy shot through him. It wasn't painful exactly, but it felt like every nerve in his body was vibrating. Hurry, Simon, Irinia's voice urged. The Zalver ship is almost upon us. Simon gritted his teeth, fumbling with the stabilizer module. Yeah, no pressure or anything. As he connected the module, the core's energy field flickered and dimmed. Simon quickly accessed the control panel, his hands shaking as he input the deactivation sequence Irinia had provided. The core's glow began to fade, and the swirling chaos around him seemed to stabilize. Simon let out a shaky laugh. Ha! I did it! I actually did it! Simon! Irinia's voice interrupted, urgent now. Get back to the pod. The core is destabilizing. Simon's eyes widened. Wait, what? I thought I shut it down. The deactivation process has triggered a collapse, Irinia explained. You must escape before she could finish. The core emitted a blinding flash of light, and Simon felt himself being pulled into its collapsing energy. His last thought before everything went dark was a mix of terror and a strangely calm realization. I really hope this doesn't hurt too much. When Simon opened his eyes, or whatever part of his consciousness simulated sight in this bizarre state, he wasn't in the pod anymore. He wasn't anywhere anymore. Around him stretched a vast shifting expanse of shimmering light and fractured geometry. Cubes of land floated in midair, spiraling waterfalls flowed upward, and what looked like the skeleton of a whale drifted serenely by, glowing faintly green. Okay, Simon muttered, standing, or floating, in the void. This is officially weirder than my cousin's wedding, and he got married at a bowling alley. His voice didn't echo, but the sound seemed to ripple through the strange space. A cluster of what could only be described as sentient disco balls drifted nearby, flashing colors in a pattern that felt oddly judgmental. All right, no need to stare, Simon said, waving a hand at the orbs. I'm just as confused as you are. As if in response, the disco balls pulsed once and zipped away, leaving Simon alone again. Cool, that's fine. I didn't want company anyway, he muttered, glancing around. Irinia, can you hear me? Please tell me you've got some magical alien tech that can fix this. There was no response, just the faint hum of the shimmering void. Simon sighed, running a hand through his hair. Great. Stranded in a pocket dimension. Typical Monday. Before he could spiral further into self-pity, a new sound reached his ears, a soft melodic hum, like the faint notes of a lullaby carried on the wind. Simon turned toward the source and squinted. In the distance, or what he assumed was the distance, was a figure. At first it looked like just another fragment of this chaotic realm, But as Simon moved closer, he realized it was a person. Or at least, it resembled a person. The figure was humanoid, tall and luminous, with skin that seemed to ripple like liquid silver. Its eyes glowed with a soft, otherworldly light, and its hair flowed around it like it was underwater. Hi, Simon called out, raising a hand in greeting. Don't suppose you're here to help a guy out, are you? The figure tilted its head, studying him with an expression Simon couldn't quite read. When it spoke, its voice was like a symphony, layered and resonant. You are unexpected, it said, its tone both curious and amused. Simon blinked. Well, that's one way to describe me. I usually go with unlucky or frequently confused, but sure, unexpected works. The figure's lips curved into a smile. You possess humor even in the face of uncertainty. Fascinating. Simon shrugged. It's either that or start screaming, and I'm trying to save that for later. The figure stepped closer, its movements fluid and graceful. You are human, yet you carry the mark of the Kuro-san traveler. How have you come to this place? Simon gestured vaguely around him. Long story short, tried to shut down a giant space-time blender, got sucked into the cosmic aftermath. Pretty standard hero stuff, really. The figure's eyes brightened, and it let out a soft laugh, an actual laugh, musical and warm. You are unlike any being I have encountered in eons. Yeah, I get that a lot, Simon said. So, any chance you can point me toward an exit? Maybe a dimension where gravity makes sense? The figure's expression grew more serious. This place is a nexus, a convergence of fractured realities. It is both a prison and a sanctuary. Simon frowned. Well, that's vague and ominous. So how do I get out of here? To leave, the figure said. You must stabilize the resonance of your being. Only then can you align with the correct dimensional frequency. Simon blinked. Okay, I understood about half of those words. Is there a manual for this sort of thing? The figure smiled again. Your humor is a strength, but you must focus. The core of your essence is tied to your purpose. What drives you, human? Simon hesitated, scratching his head. Honestly, right now just not dying. That's pretty high on the list. The figure regarded him for a long moment, its glowing eyes unblinking. Survival is a primal instinct, but it is not purpose. Search deeper. Simon sighed, closing his eyes. His mind drifted to Arinia, to her determination and unshakable confidence in him. He thought about the rift, the Zalvar, and the chaos threatening the galaxy. And then he thought about popcorn. The memory was small, almost laughably trivial, but it stuck with him. A night long ago when he and his best friend had watched old sci-fi movies, laughing and tossing popcorn at each other. It wasn't the memory itself that mattered. It was the feeling, connection, belonging. Simon opened his eyes. I guess I just want to make a difference, even if it's a small one. The figure nodded slowly, as if Simon had passed some unspoken test. That desire is your anchor. Hold on to it. Before Simon could ask what that meant, the shimmering void around them began to shift. The fractured landscapes started to merge, their edges smoothing and blending into a cohesive whole. Whoa, Simon said, stepping back. What's happening? You are realigning, the figure said, its voice calm. Your purpose guides you home. Simon glanced around nervously as the void pulsed with energy. Great, that's great. But what about you? Are you coming too? The figure's smile was bittersweet. I belong here, in the spaces between. But you have a journey to complete. Before Simon could protest, the void collapsed around him, and he felt himself hurtling through a tunnel of light and sound. The last thing he heard was the figure's voice, soft and distant. Remember your purpose, Simon Hayes. It will guide you through the darkest of paths. When Simon opened his eyes again, he was back on the Kaleidus. Arinia was leaning over him, her glowing eyes wide with concern. Simon, she exclaimed. You're alive. Simon groaned, sitting up slowly. Barely. Remind me to never touch anything glowing again. Irinia's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Simon thought he saw relief flicker across her features. You succeeded, she said. The anomaly has stabilized. Simon managed a weak smile. Great. Now let's go celebrate by not getting killed by the Zalvar, okay? Irinia's lips twitched in amusement. A reasonable request. As the ship's systems came back online, Simon leaned back in his seat, staring out at the now calm rift. Between you and me, he said, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this whole space adventure thing. Irinia raised an eyebrow. Do not grow overconfident, Simon Hayes. Simon grinned. Too late. The Kaleidos soared through the tranquil expanse of space, leaving the anomaly behind like the ghost of a bad dream. Simon sat in the co-pilot seat, legs stretched out and a bag of dehydrated space snacks in hand. He popped one into his mouth and grimaced. I'll say this for Earth, he mumbled, chewing. At least our chips don't taste like cardboard. Irinia, seated at the main console, gave him a sidelong glance. Those are nutrient packs designed for maximum efficiency, not enjoyment. Simon held up another chip, squinting at it. Yeah, well, they're maximum something, all right. He flicked it into the air, letting it drift in zero gravity, before lazily catching it with his mouth. Anyway, you can't argue that we're officially out of the frying pan. Now it's just a question of whether we're headed into the fire. The Zalvar fleet is no longer pursuing us, Irinia said, her tone measured. The destabilization of the anomaly forced their retreat. Simon raised an eyebrow. Wait, so you're telling me the universe-shattering chaos vortex actually worked in our favor? That's a first. Irinia didn't reply, though the faintest hint of a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. The ship systems hummed softly, filling the quiet that settled between them. For the first time since Simon had been plucked from his uneventful life on Earth, the absence of immediate danger felt odd. So, Simon said, breaking the silence, what now? Do we head back to the Galactic Council and get a pat on the back for saving reality? Irinia's fingers danced over the controls as she brought up a star chart. The Council will need to be informed of the anomaly's stabilization, but our mission is not yet complete. Simon frowned. Not complete? Irinia, we just shut down a space-time blender and survived a dimension full of existential weirdness. What more is there? Irinia turned to face him fully, her luminous eyes steady. The Zalvar's device was merely a fragment of a larger plan. The galaxy remains at risk until their broader ambitions are understood and neutralized. Simon groaned, letting his head fall back against the seat. Of course it does. Why would we get to take a victory lap? Irinia's expression softened, and she tilted her head slightly. You have already accomplished more than I anticipated, Simon Hayes. Few would have survived the trials you faced. Simon smirked. Well, when you put it like that, I guess I am pretty amazing. Irinia's faint smile returned, but her tone turned serious. Your resilience and resourcefulness have proven invaluable, but the path ahead will demand even more from you. Simon sat up, his smirk fading. You mean there's more saving the galaxy stuff on the horizon? Look, I'm flattered, really, but I'm just a guy. I'm not some chosen hero. Irinia regarded him for a long moment before speaking. Perhaps not, but you are capable of far more than you realize. Simon blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. You really believe that? I do, she said simply. Simon let the words sink in, a strange mix of pride and trepidation settling in his chest. Well, he said, standing and stretching, I guess if the galaxy still needs saving, I'd better stock up on more of these terrible chips. He reached for the bag, only to have it drift away in zero gravity. And maybe a snack leash. Irinia chuckled softly, the sound warm and unguarded. The ship's comm system chirped, cutting through the moment. Irinia glanced at the console, her expression sharpening. It is a transmission from the Council, she said. Simon groaned. Let me guess. They're going to congratulate us, then immediately send us into another death trap. Irinia activated the comms, and a holographic projection of a council representative appeared, a tall, insectoid figure with multifaceted eyes and a voice like a string quartet. Irinia of Kairos, the representative began, the council acknowledges your successful stabilization of the anomaly. Your efforts have preserved countless realities. Simon leaned over to the hologram, giving a mock salute. Simon Hayes, Earthling, co-pilot, snack critic, and occasional reality saver, you're welcome. The representative's antennae twitched, possibly in confusion. We also extend gratitude to your human companion, it said diplomatically. Simon grinned. That's me, the human companion. Happy to help, though next time maybe a thank you card would suffice. Irinia shot him a look that was equal parts amused and exasperated before addressing the hologram. What are the council's next directives? The representative's tone grew somber. The Zalvar remain a significant threat. Intelligence suggests their leadership is regrouping near the Veil Nebula. Your skills will be required to infiltrate and disrupt their operations. Simon sighed. Called it. The hologram flickered off, leaving the two of them alone again. Irinia turned to Simon. You are under no obligation to continue this mission, Simon. You have already done more than was ever expected of you. Simon hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. A part of him wanted to go back to Earth, to the safety and simplicity of his old life. But another part, a part that had grown louder over the course of this journey, felt something else. Purpose. Well, he said finally, it's not like Earth's got much going on for me right now. And besides, he glanced at Irinia, a small smile tugging at his lips. I wouldn't want to miss out on the chance to see you roll your eyes at me a few more times. Irinia's lips twitched, but she said nothing. Simon leaned back in his seat, staring out at the stars. All right, let's go save the galaxy, again, but after this I'm demanding a vacation, preferably somewhere with decent chips. Irinia nodded, her voice steady. Agreed. The Kaleidos accelerated, its engines humming as it sped toward the Veil Nebula. Simon stared out at the endless expanse of stars, a strange sense of calm settling over him. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man drifting through life. He felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. And for now, that was enough.